Now, John Jones moving up to heavyweight at this point in his career, like he's still 30 pounds off Tom Aspinall, and I think Tom beats John Jones at this stage. But the thing honestly that undermines John, in my mind, more than anything else, is his seeming lack of confidence to fight these guys. Like that honestly is the biggest thing. If I dig into it deep, it's his lack of confidence. It seems his seeming lack of confidence to fight Tom Aspinall.
Lewis Thompson at talkSPORT MMA, delighted to be joined by Mr. Dan Hardy. Dan, how are we doing today, mate?
Yeah, really good, my friend. I'm just enjoying the nice weather that you're sharing down in London as well.
So, Dan, talk to me. April 3rd, the PFL World Tournament. How excited are you to get back in there and watch these fights?
I'm really excited. Honestly, the change in format, the fact that we've got these first 4 events back to back in Orlando, I feel a little spoiled, to be honest, because I'm going from nice weather now to even nicer weather in a few days. And we've got, we've got a new format now. Obviously, it's a tournament instead of a season. So these fighters are basically, they've got one shot to keep progressing forward in an 8-person tournament. And the talent is absolutely stacked across the board. So we'll be kicking off on April 3rd with the welterweights and the women's flyweights. And then after that, we're motoring on, and it's a real quick turnaround for these fighters. We've got June for the next round, and then championship month in August. So it's going to be a busy and exciting year.
Yeah, so we go from April, and I believe that the fights are in Orlando, Florida. So you might do a bit of sightseeing while you're there, and then on through to August. So a pretty hectic time, and just not just for the fighters, but for yourself as well. How much kind of preparation do you need to do going into this kind of thing?
Yeah, quite a bit. I'm the matchmaker as well for PFL Europe, so I'm busy working on those shows as well. We've got May 10th and May 24th coming up, Belfast and Paris. So there's a lot going on with that as well. But with these world tournament fights, fortunately, they're fighters that I've been watching for many years. A lot of high level fighters, former world champions. So I'm very familiar with a lot of them. It's just a case of making sure my notes are all together. I've got all their records updated in my mind, and I know kind of what to expect from the matchups. That's the most interesting thing for me, is not only the fighters and who they are, but also how they're going to deal with the problem in front of them.
Yeah, and I want to touch on that Belfast card soon, because I don't know if you've clocked, but it resonates with me quite well. But before that, I just want to talk about some of the British and Irish talent on the cards coming up. We've got, it starts off with the welterweight and the featherweights. We've got Nathan Kelly representing Ireland, and then we've got the likes of Jake Hadley and Fabian Edwards, the brother of Leon Edwards. So, looking from an outside perspective, who can British fans have their eyes on? What can they expect? Can you see any of them going far in the tournament?
I mean, all 3 of those names are ideal people to keep their eye on. Jake Hadley's joined us he's just finished his UFC contract. So he's come over and joined us, and I followed his career from when he was a young man, and he's always been a very, very dangerous fighter. Nathan Kelly's another one that I've been watching for a long time, and someone that has really made good use of the addition of elbows as well. Early days in the PFL, we didn't use elbows, but recently I managed to lean on the right people, and we're full unified rules now, which means that Nathan Kelly can be completely devastating with elbows off the fence. And I'm excited to see him really step up a level in this tournament, and he's in the mix with some absolute killers. But he's got all the skills and talent that he needs to progress. So I'm excited to see how he does. And then you mentioned Fabian, a super high level middleweight fighter. He's got a very tough fight starting out with Impa Kasanganay. But that for me is one of the most interesting matchups that we could have across the whole tournament is Kasanganay versus Edwards.
Yeah, and I just want to get your thought. We've seen recently the likes of Dakota Ditcheva, Brendan Loughnane. This is life changing for some of these fighters. They may never get this kind of opportunity again. Have you seen fighters get in there and almost their transition from the beginning to the end, and how much this means to them, and all of the motivation and determination involved?
I mean, we've had it. You've mentioned a couple of names there. Obviously, what Dakota's done has been unparalleled so far. She won the European title and then went on to win the world title, and she is she's basically the woman to beat right now in all of the women's divisions, pound for pound. A lot of people are very excited about her. We've also got the likes of Lewis McGrillen as well, who's
Oh, I love
just
Lewis.
he's an
Great
absolute
fighter.
superstar, isn't he? I mean, everything he touches, he turns to gold or to dust, depending on what his intention is. But there are a lot of fighters that are coming through. I mean, honestly, the best story for me right now is Paul Hughes. Bringing us back to the Belfast card. He's I remember early, just a few fights ago, really, where he was really struggling to make ends meet, relying on sponsors to keep him in the gym and to basically keep food on the table. And he had a tough decision in front of him. Does he wait around? Does he wait for the call and go the same route that everybody else does, or does he stand his ground and make a different course? And that's what he's done. I know for a fact that his life has changed since joining the
Mm.
PFL, and the money that he's earning is life changing as well. And for me, that's just a great story to share with other young fighters that are progressing through their career, because MMA is a very, very difficult water to navigate, and to have the option of the PFL is very, very valuable for people that it shouldn't be underestimated.
Yeah, and let's just get on to big news. Paul Hughes, he's coming back May 10th. I chatted to him quite recently, a couple of weeks back, and he was live outside the SSE arena. The sun was out, and it almost just felt like he was raring to go. He just wanted to get back in there. I think he's the kind of guy that just wants to keep going. And although, as a fan myself, I was slightly disappointed the Usman Nurmagomedov fight wasn't made as a rematch, but I understand that there are circumstances from almost Nurmagomedov's side of things that why it couldn't happen, when Paul wanted to fight next. So, how determined do you think Paul's going to be to get back in there and get a dominant win in order to best prepare for that rematch?
Oh, I mean, I agree with you. All of the energy that he's putting off right now is just it really is. It's quite special. I was in the gym with him the other day, and I watched him hitting pads and having to move around with one of his training partners, and he looks superb. He not only is he glowing, physically, like health wise, and just confidence wise, but his skills are really, really sharp. And it is disappointing that he didn't get the Usman fight, but the story keeps moving forward, doesn't it? Bruno Miranda's an incredibly tough person to fight for him. He's going to stand his ground. He's got the grappling skills to be able to cause Paul all kinds of issues if the fight hits the mat. And Bruno Miranda's looking to keep himself in this picture, and he sees Paul Hughes as someone that he doesn't have the same experience that Bruno Miranda's got, doesn't have the same kind of like international travel experience, and he's the one coming into enemy territory, and that goes a long way for some fighters. It certainly did for me. So I expect Paul to look sharp, but I think he's going to need to get a win over Bruno Miranda. But
Yeah,
I
and
also think
sorry.
that the energy coming off him is one of the reasons why people are coming to watch him fight. Is people feel something special is happening.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, Paul told me, Bruno is a very bad dude. I think were his exact words, and he has to be in his very best. But I just see I'm gonna be there on May 10th in Belfast, and I might be slightly biased here, Dan, but the atmosphere is gonna be electric, and I just think Paul can use that to carry that through and get Bruno out there early, and then the rematch is next. That is next for Paul Hughes, right? I know fighters don't like to talk ahead of their next fight that they have, just to the one focus and the one opponent, but that is ultimately how Paul Hughes's year should end, is with that Usman Nurmagomedov rematch, right?
Look, I mean, I agree with you. The first fight was so competitive that I would have had no problem with them running the fight back straight away. But I also see this from Usman's perspective, and he opened the door unnecessarily to Paul Hughes the first time around, and to do it a second time might be a miscalculation, especially without having some time to watch Paul develop a little bit and see what else he's got to offer. Maybe have someone like a Bruno Miranda test him out and see if he can find any weaknesses. Um, but there are other fighters also in the race as well. This is the thing that Paul has to keep in mind when it comes to his performance in Belfast. You've got a big fight in Paris coming up with Mansour Barnouhi and Archie Colgan. That's going to be a very, very important fight for the number one contender. And we've also got the World Tournament that's going to we're going to have a champion emerging from that as well. But for me, the momentum's behind Paul. People want to see that Usman rematch, and I think if he has a good performance against Bruno Miranda, he's going to be the man calling for that rematch pretty quickly.
Yeah, it's certainly a very exciting time ahead for the PFL in terms of the World Tournament and those guys like Paul Hughes. Dan, I just want to get your thoughts on, a few other prominent names in the PFL right now, and one of those goes by the name of Jake Paul. Now, a bit more prominent in the world of boxing right now, but I think Don Davis has come out and said that we can expect his debut at the end of 2025, and I know he's smashing it in the world of boxing right now, but what have you heard? Tell me, when can we expect to see Jake Paul make his MMA debut? And I even read an interview about Alexander Usyk's one of his coaches saying that if the money's there, then we'll get Usyk in the cage with Jake Paul. What are your thoughts on all this?
Well, one thing I can say is I do know that Usyk is absolutely dead serious about fighting in MMA. I can tell you that for sure, which would be incredibly exciting because I think he would be lethal. Um, as far as Jake Paul goes, I don't know. I mean, Don Davis is the best person to ask with that regard. He's the ringmaster. He's the person that deals with Jake Paul and the whole chaotic side of combat sports. I just kind of sit back and watch and do what I'm needed to. If Jake Paul steps into there and fights, I would be more than happy to commentate, and I'd be fascinating to see how it plays out because I mean, look, I've taken heat for this, but I actually think he would do pretty well, right? He's young, he's powerful, he's got all the money he needs to dedicate all of his time to his craft. He's improving at boxing fairly quickly. He has a background in wrestling at, I think, Ohio State, so he's got the ingredients, all the things that he needs to be successful. And then he's not going to fight he's not going to fight Leon Edwards, is he? He's not going to fight someone that's at the top of their game. He's going to want to fight Ben Askren or Tyron Woodley or probably call me out or you know what I mean. He's going to want to fight someone, even Nate Diaz. We'll hold Nate in high regard, but he's 40% scar tissue now, and he's an old guy when it comes to fighting. I even don't think that would be a good matchup for Nate Diaz because Jake Paul could certainly crack him and hurt him with small gloves on.
I mean, we've seen how Jake Paul's got on in boxing with all the names you've just mentioned there, but I mean, to me, from an outside perspective, if I'm having Jake Paul up against Nate Diaz in MMA, I'm picking Nate Diaz every day of the week. I mean, I just feel like if Jake Paul is to make his debut, it has to be someone maybe a bit more newish to the sport and just coming through the ranks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that would make a lot of sense. But like look at say Thad Jean that's just stepped into the world tournament. He was one of the alternates, and he's got an opportunity now to really, really cause some problems. And like, would Jake Paul want to fight Thad Jean? I don't think so. I don't even think he'd want to fight Biagio, and
Mm.
Biagio's a lightweight. Biagio Ali Walsh. Like, they're just not good matchups for him. If I'm, and this is why he fought Tyron Woodley and Ben Askren, is because they're old and they're slow. Like we hold Nate in high regard, but Nate is not the person that he was when, he was flipping the bird to the cameras because he's got someone in a triangle. He's not that guy anymore. He doesn't move the same way that he used to. Like, I was ringside when Nate and Jake Paul boxed. I was on comms for that, and
Hmm.
Nate didn't hurt him with anything. He didn't land anything of significance. But Jake can crack. Like, he's a young man. He moves quickly, and that goes a long way in this sport. It really does.
Mm. So you're pretty optimistic there about Jake Paul's future in MMA. Another name that we've seen go the other way and then come back is none other than Francis Ngannou. Now, he's made his PFL debut in October and he demolished Shane Ferreira. And we're yet to hear anything else about him there because the boxing opportunities are just where it's at right now for Francis Ngannou. What have you heard about Francis Ngannou? I saw a tweet from Don Davis the other day, and it was along the lines of fight John Jones, $50 million, fight of the century. Like, what is going on here?
Look, from what I understand, Francis wants some activity, whether that's boxing or MMA. I think he wants to have another run out, very soon. And I don't think it would be a bad idea for him to have another boxing run out. I think there are some really interesting fights there for him, and I think he can make a good chunk of cash while at the same time the PFL heavyweight division keeps developing. We're going to have a winner of the world tournament. We've got the likes of Nemkov and Goltsov, and even Fajeda. I know obviously he lost to Ngannou, but that doesn't mean to say that he's not going to demolish everybody else and work his way back. So there are good options for him in MMA. I don't know who I would put on the table right now unless it is John Jones for 50 million, or even Tom Aspinall. Like, give Tom Aspinall the 50 million. However it plays out, I don't get involved in those high end dealings. But one thing I will say is if we do get Ngannou versus any of those MMA champions that I've mentioned, then we need to like rent out the Coliseum or something, because I don't think anywhere else would do it justice, would it?
Does Ngannou win a fight with John Jones?
Yeah, I think he does. Yeah, absolutely. Look, and again, and this.
What makes you say that?
Well, a few things. Uh, the thing is with John Jones, like, I mean, I have admired John Jones for a long time. Both as a fighter and martial artist, and also, we did a lot of autograph signings and stuff back in the day, and he was always great with the fans. For all the critical things that people say about John, like he stood on that Zion's booth for probably 5 hours with me and Frank Mir, and met everybody, and it kept his
Wow.
energy up. He's a good dude, but he's aging, right? We all age. Like, I wake up in the morning and I hit the bag, and then the next day I wake up and I feel like a bus hit me. I don't heal the same way that I used to, and that's the same for everybody. And like, we saw that with John's pectoral injury. Like, him getting to the cage healthy at this stage is a real challenge. When he said 6 months to prepare for Aspinall, my first thought is he's not going to be able to train for 6 months without getting a major injury somehow,
Mm,
right? And it goes the same for all of these guys. What I will say about Francis Ngannou is similar to Yoel Romero. Is an absolute athletic freak, right? I mean, he has muscles on muscles. He's got such low body fat percentage. He's so physically well balanced, right? Now, John Jones moving up to heavyweight at this point in his career, like, he's still 30 pounds off Tom Aspinall,
mm,
and I think Tom beats John Jones at this stage. But the thing, honestly, that undermines John, in my mind, more than anything else, is his seeming lack of confidence to fight these guys.
mm,
Like, that honestly is the biggest thing. If I dig into it deep, it's his lack of confidence. It seems his seeming lack of confidence to fight Tom Aspinall, and I feel like he would absolutely feel the same thing same way about Francis Ngannou, because the man can legitimately punch holes in people. I feel like John is one of the all time greats, but in the current heavyweight picture, it's Ngannou versus Aspinall. They're the top two guys now.
I mean, yeah, I was speaking to Michael Bisping ahead of UFC London, and he mentioned something similar, that he had heard that John Jones is afraid of that KO, and with the legacy on the line, he's not really that excited about a Tom Aspinall fight because of the potential consequences that could ultimately happen. Because as we've seen, Tom Aspinall in the UFC, he gets in there, and within 60 seconds, his opponents are unconscious on the canvas. So, like, why do you think someone like John Jones is so? I don't know. I don't know what the reasons are, but there's been this big delay, and it's just not happened yet.
I think that there are a lot of factors involved in it, and I think and this is why the price tag has to be something astronomical, because you have to put something on the table that would balance out the legacy that John Jones has to live with for the rest of his life, right? Now, like, I love John Jones just as much as I love Chuck Liddell. But right now, if I think of Chuck Liddell, I don't think of his like mad knockout punches. I think of the ones that he ended his career on, where he was the one crashing to the canvas. And a lot of people were frustrated at the fact that Khabib didn't stick around for more fights, but he has 5, 6, 8 more fights in that division, and someone's going to beat him because it's the nature of the sport. Like, he was fantastic when he was unbeaten, but if you keep going for long enough, someone will find a way through,
Mm,
right? And this is why for me, I always enjoy. Um, the journey of Islam Makhachev, because you can see the development before and after his knockout loss. There's nothing you can do about that knockout loss. It happened. You can't offload it to anything else. You can't excuse it in any way. You can only learn from it. And John's got that one loss on his record, which now is irrelevant because that rule has been removed. So why would he want to go out on a massive knockout loss to someone like Aspinall or even Ngannou for 50 million? I just, it's the same reason why Nate Diaz wouldn't fight Jake Paul for 15 million in MMA, because that 15 million on the table compared to the legacy of me walking into every room ever and being Nate Diaz, you don't want that tarnished. Just like John Jones doesn't want people to see him, with Ngannou or Tom Aspinall standing over him.
Mm. Is there not an element with someone like Francis Ngannou that, because I think a high up boss in the PFL has said that it's likely that he is going to box first before he gets back into MMA. Is there not an element in your eyes that if Francis Ngannou goes and say he fights someone like Deontay Wilder and he knocks out Deontay Wilder, then Ngannou's going to be thinking, then this is maybe my call for the next couple of years, and MMA is kind of pushed to the side?
Yeah, perhaps that's the case, but I would much rather see that than him kind of hang around and fight someone that is uninspiring for him. If a fight against Deontay Wilder would be interesting for him, it would get him into the gym and keep him motivated. Then that for me is far healthier for his MMA career than for him to not be doing that.
Mm.
I just feel like at this point in Ngannou's career and also his life, he's focused on boxing as like a fun outlet to make a bit of money and to try something new, and he's looking at MMA as the thing that he's gonna use to develop other people's lives in the future. All the time I talk to him now, it's about PFL Africa and about the fighters that he's going to bring through and develop. So,
Yeah.
I think we're seeing the closing years of Ngannou's career, regardless of whether it's boxing or MMA. But I still think his impact in MMA is going to be great, even after he's hung up the gloves.
Mm. And just to finish off, Dan, do we see Jake Paul and Francis Ngannou fighting in the PFL this year?
Um, Good questions. I don't know. I think it's more likely that we see Francis Ngannou fight than Jake Paul. I think Jake Paul's gonna be trying to get Canelo and Anthony Joshua and whoever else he can get into a boxing ring. But for me, I think Ngannou could certainly fight twice this year. He could certainly box and then come back to MMA later in the year and say fight the winner of the world tournament or something. I don't see any reason why not.
Any news on Dakota Ditcheva?
No, but I'll be getting some news very soon. Hopefully, I'm excited to see her fight again.
You're teasing me
She's
with that, Dan.
yeah, she's pound for pound for me. She's the best right now.
Top man, Dan, I really appreciate your time today, and I'm really looking forward to the World Tournament and Paul Hughes in Belfast. Everything there's so much to be excited for in the PFL right now.
Thank you, mate. Lots to look forward to. I hope you enjoyed these fights, and I'll speak to you again soon.